And you are watching ABC News Live here. Quite a bombshell for a Tuesday afternoon. There at the mic, you are seeing New York Attorney General Letitia James side by side with her investigators, Ann Clark and June Kim. Both were tapped as special deputies as they were investigating the sexual harassment charges on behalf of both federal and state employees. 11 plaintiffs, 9 New York employees saying that they were sexually harassed by Governor Andrew Cuomo. Aaron Katursky, ABC News senior investigative reporter, also Brian Buckmeyer, felony trial attorney, joining me now as we've been listening to what the Attorney General said, along with the 2 investigators, with regard to the details of what they found in this report. Aaron, I'm going to start with you. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, just looking at the charges, or I guess not necessarily the charges that have been brought up against him thus far. That's going to be up to police department and prosecutors. But this report put out by the Attorney General talking about the workplace, these plaintiffs coming forward, calling it toxic, hostile, abusive, full of fear, intimidation, bullying, vindictive, and then going into details, Aaron, about these various women coming forward saying that he groped them, that he made sexual comments, sexual advances. I mean, the list just goes on. I don't even know where to begin. What stood out to you, Aaron, and did you even expect a detailed report like this with so many quite gross, frankly, specifics about what these women said happened to them?
Kira, the specifics are spelled out over 168 pages. There were 74,000 pieces of evidence that the investigators reviewed. They interviewed scores of people and ultimately found and appeared to substantiate the complaints of 11 women who were their complaining witnesses. 9 of them are current or former state employees that they said Governor Cuomo sexually harassed through inappropriate touching or through suggestive and sexualized comments. Governor Cuomo has denied some of this conduct, according to investigators, but he has admitted to other parts of that conduct, but put a different spin on it, had a different interpretation of the events. But by and large, the investigators appear to have corroborated the accounts that we had heard beginning a number of months ago when women came forward to say that Cuomo had harassed them.
Brian, I want to bring you in on this, just some of the details that I really had to stop and go back and listen to again. A state trooper. She was part of his protective detail, and what she reports that he put his finger down the back of her neck, his hand across her stomach, and made advances toward her. This is a woman assigned to protect the governor. And then the other example that stood out to me, and please, I want you to weigh in on all of this, Brian, was the young junior staffer, a survivor of sexual assault. And she said that the governor made advances towards her and asked her specifics about when she was sexually assaulted, asked about that, and if she would feel comfortable with certain moves on behalf of him, and if it made her feel uncomfortable or if it was okay. It is really hard to comprehend what we just heard. And I don't know for you as a felony trial attorney, law and crime host, how you're absorbing all of this.
So as I'm absorbing and I'm hearing criminal charges, I'm hearing the elements of crimes being listed. What I think we have here is the New York Attorney General James, as she said, her job is done, but she did a phenomenal job in presenting, I think, enough plates on the table so that civil rights attorneys can come in and pick up and start representing some of these complainants. Prosecutors can come in and say, all right, we need to investigate. We need to question some of these women, get times, dates, allegations. I'm hearing misdemeanors. I'm hearing some low-level felonies as describing the charges. And I think you're going to see a lot of people look to this report and say, what can we do to affect change? Namely, the Assembly Judiciary Committee, who's already been investigating the governor in terms of whether or not he should step down, which he said in the past he would never do so. So maybe those articles of impeachment are going to be written based on a lot of the words from New York Attorney General James.
So, Aaron, what does happen now? Letitia James saying that her work here is done, and now it's up to prosecutors and police departments. Can you kind of take us through what we could see now with regard to formal charges and what could happen to the governor now?
Well, the Attorney General, Kira, says that she is not making any criminal referral to a prosecutor's office, so we're not sure that any of this is going to have criminal consequences for Governor Cuomo. At least one of the complaining witnesses did make a formal complaint to police in Albany, New York, at the Capitol, but we're not sure whether that will result in any criminal charges. There are also there's another investigation here, though, that could potentially be more consequential for Cuomo, and that's the one being led by the New York State Legislature. In and of itself, we've heard from the Speaker of the New York State Assembly that the Attorney General's investigation would not be the basis for an impeachment proceeding against Governor Cuomo. But he is going to wait for the legislative findings, which could include yet more details, and then make a determination whether Cuomo should be impeached or whether they can perhaps negotiate a way for him not to run for a fourth term, which has been his ultimate goal, to surpass his father's tenure of 3 terms. He's in his 3rd term now. But whether he runs for a 4th term, whether it's tenable following this report, now I think is an open question.
And with regard, Aaron, to the governor responding, clearly we haven't heard from him within the past few minutes since this press conference wrapped up. But according to one of the investigators, Ann Clark, she has said that Cuomo has either done a very good spin job on these details or has just flatly denied. What do we know about where he did actually say he did have some type of contact with these women and where he flat out denied? There are a few examples that stood out. He actually said that the trooper initiated a kiss or physical touch. What more can you tell us about what he has flat out denied and what he has maybe sort of put what Ann Clark said, a bit of spin on what happened?
I think that's consistent with a number of his public statements about these allegations since they were first raised. He has said, and blaming his Italian heritage for being kind of touchy and huggy and physical with people. He said that's part of how he behaves, and he has said he apologized if that makes people uncomfortable. But of course, the women say it went beyond just what might be considered, okay type touching. He has also said that the women may have misinterpreted him and his, and his touching or his comments for something more than he meant. And he has talked about some of the instances where he called women attractive or where he commented on their attire. He portrayed it as more innocent. And that seems to be the version that he gave to investigators to listen to the attorney Ann Clark. Of course, the women certainly took it differently. And in fact, we heard the investigators talk here about how a number of the women found the workplace toxic, hostile, abusive. They used words like fear and intimidation and bullying and vindictive. And the investigators said that the women found it deeply humiliating and offensive.
Brian, let me ask you as an attorney. You just heard Aaron say that Cuomo has come forward and said many of these women have misinterpreted him, that his actions were completely innocent. But Brian, when you hear, and I went back and looked at my notes, Charlotte Bennett, this junior staffer in college, she was sexually assaulted. And while working for Cuomo, he asked her not only about the details of her assault, but then proceeded to tell tell her how lonely he was. This is according to Charlotte Bennett, and that he wanted to be touched. Is that innocent behavior? Is that misinterpretation?
No, not at all. And I think what the governor is attempting to do, either through counsel or just his own volition, is trying to have broad strokes in terms of either saying this didn't happen or had a different spin on it. That example is not misinterpretation. The example of hugging a woman and running your arm up her back or up her blouse is not a misinterpretation. These things cannot be talked away about in terms of his heritage or his age or he grew up in a different time. That excuse doesn't fly anymore. And I think it's refreshing, and it's, as the Attorney General has said, all the commendation should go to these brave women who came forward, because that's not how the workplace should have ever operated in the past or should have operated today. And now we're seeing, I think, a bit of a reckoning, and glad to see that coming up in these days and age.
Interesting. You talk about reckoning. We've seen a lot of that, obviously, in the past year, from racial reckoning to the #MeToo movement. You know, in the past, a lot of these cases, as you well know, Brian, have been a lot of he said, she said, and more often than none, men in power win in these situations. What is going to make this so different when it comes down to Governor Andrew Cuomo? I mean, I'm looking at the details here, like Aaron pointed out, you know, 5-month investigation, 179 individuals talked to, more than 74,000 pieces of evidence. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Audio recordings, pictures, text messages, emails. So in light of not only what's going on in our country and the reckoning that we are witnessing, when you look at what this investigation revealed, is that going to be enough where we will see action taken here?
I think it is enough. I think it goes back to the conviction of Harvey Weinstein, where you saw just typical defense attorney arguments, which I thought were phenomenal if you were a few years back, where you could say, hey, she was asking for it. She initiated the first kiss. But I think the change in society's way in which we look at the workplace, the change in which we believe is what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, we're all jurors, basically. We're all potential jurors. And now prosecutors have the ability to prosecute these cases about a man in power putting his hand up a woman's blouse, about asking questions of a sexual survivor victim that may not have been a powerful case 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. But in 2021, they know they can get those convictions looking at Harvey Weinstein, looking at other similar cases. You talk about the NXIVM case. You talk about other cases where women are survivors of sexual abuse. And now prosecutors know the tools, they know the arguments, and they know that society is not going to turn a blind eye to these types of things, regardless of who's in power.
And we're not just talking about staffers and individuals working with him, women working with him in the office, but we're actually talking about a state trooper, a woman who was assigned to protect him, and her testimony pretty darn powerful with what she said and the claims that she brings against the governor. How powerful is that testimony lined up with staffers?
I think it's remarkably powerful, because when you think about it, an officer is supposed to look towards danger when they're guarding an individual person such as this. So their back, their vulnerable place is to the person they're protecting. And why would you ever turn around and think the person I am protecting, and also it kind of reminds me of the story of the scorpion and the frog, the person I'm protecting is the one that this trooper should have been looking out for the most. And so I think it rings a piece of disgust that she would put herself in the line of duty, thinking that she may have to take a bullet, she may have to get in between another individual and the governor, in such a position of honor to protect someone like that. And this is the person who's harming her the most. I think that's where people are going to get a lot of sickened, because they should be. That's a sickening thing to think of. Aaron,
you were there. What stands out to you?
I think the breadth of the investigation, Kira, is fairly significant. They interviewed, as I say, scores of individuals. They ultimately were able to substantiate the claims of 11 women 9 of whom were current or former state employees who interacted with the governor in a variety of capacities, some on a regular basis. At least one just met him only once. And all of these women were subjected to conduct that the Attorney General said corrodes the very fabric and character of state government. So it is a damning report. On the other hand, Kira, I will say it does not appear, at least on our initial read, and it's 168 pages, so, give us a minute, but on the initial read, it does not appear to have found any additional conduct that was not already publicly known. No additional women appear to have come forward. There is no allegation that we have seen yet about, him trying to skip out on different kinds of training or anything that may be even more serious than all of this clearly already is.
Aaron, Brian, please stay with me. It's the top of the hour, about 2 minutes past the hour. And if you are just joining us here on ABC News Live, we are following the breaking news of Attorney General there in New York announcing the investigation that she conducted alongside with 2 investigators, tapped special deputies, finding that Governor Andrew Cuomo, within their investigative report, 5 months they worked on that report, Andrew Cuomo, they found sexually harassing multiple women, including current and former state employees. The Attorney General also adding that Andrew Cuomo inappropriately touched women on numerous occasions and made suggestive and unwelcome comments that created a hostile work environment. Take a listen.
Governor Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women, many of whom were young women, by engaging in unwanted groping, kisses, hugging, and by making inappropriate comments. This investigation has revealed conduct that corrodes the very fabric and character of our state government and shines light on injustice that can be present at the highest levels of government. But none of this would have been illuminated if not for the heroic women who came forward. And I am inspired by all the brave women who came forward. But more importantly, I believe them. And I thank them for their bravery.
Joining us once again, ABC News senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky, who is there at the Attorney General's office in New York. Brian Buckmeyer, felony trial attorney and law and crime host, continuing our breaking news coverage here as the report investigation, 5-month investigation, is now out. Governor Andrew Cuomo reportedly questioned for 11 hours, and now we are hearing what 11 plaintiffs, 9 of whom are New York employees, have to say about how they were treated by the governor. Brian, where do we go from here? This is a report. Now it's up to prosecutors and police departments to decide where it goes from here and if indeed the governor could be charged. And there, of course, in lies the biggest question. Will he continue on as the governor? Where do we go from here?
Well, in the past, Governor Cuomo has always said he will never step down. As your reporting said earlier, he's looking at his father's legacy and trying to outdo that. And so I think you kind of have to look at it from a top-down approach. We have to ask the question, is the Judicial Committee going to go and start looking at articles of impeachment, thinking about removing him altogether? In terms of the federal charges, I'm not too familiar with those, but I think those will probably be the first ones that come after him rather than the state charges, because while these state charges are very heinous in a particular way, they seem to be lower level felony or misdemeanor charges. So I don't think district attorneys in local counties or even in the city of New York, if they're around this area, are going to go after him first. They're probably going to look up to the feds or even the Judicial Committee to see what they do and then feed off of their information to strengthen their prosecutions.
So considering the environment that we are living in now, and what we're seeing just happen across the country, Brian, from the racial reckoning to the hashtag Me Too movement, how quickly could we see prosecutors and police departments jumping on this, or is this going to be a bit of a process?
I think there may be some coordination to some degree, but I would not be surprised if this week we start seeing grand juries and panel to ask the question that you're trying to answer, that we're trying to answer right now, as to whether or not he will be indicted on federal or state charges. I would also assume that any kind of investigation in terms of impeachment into the governor, they're just going to simply adopt this information and continue with their investigation. So perhaps at the impeachment level, we might not hear anything, but I would not be surprised that this week we hear about grand juries or even potentially indictments in regards to the actions that we heard today of Governor Cuomo.
Here's how the workplace culture around Governor Andrew Cuomo has been described by these various women: toxic, hostile, abusive, fearful, full of intimidation, bullying, vindictive. Explain to me, there is a culture, an issue of culture, and how they felt versus actual descriptions of what he did to these women. So how far could these charges go? How deep could this go? What could it mean for the governor's future? Is it more on the physical touching that would bring about stronger charges versus a feeling or an energy or an environment that he created?
It would definitely be, if we're thinking from the criminal and even the civil aspect, it would be the physical touching, anything under the shirt, any groping of any sexual areas. That would definitely come with it the more severe allegations and severe charges, whether they be civil or criminal. But those feelings, that sentiment, that toxicity in the environment, a single drop of poison never kind of contaminates the whole pond. And so the question is, it's not just Cuomo, but who are the people around him who are also allowing this to happen, the retaliation that they talked about in this case. So I think we're going to see an investigation that might start with Cuomo, but is going to spread out to those who work around him to see how broadly this environment kind of contaminated the entire workforce, and how deep that touching or sentiments or words were conveyed to these 11 and even potentially more victims.
Aaron, you are there at the Attorney General's office. You've been following this. You listened to that press conference. You are now starting to hear from attorneys representing these women. What can you tell us? What are they saying? What's the reaction from them as we hear results from this 5-month investigation?
I think, in a word, Kira, it's vindicated. We know that the governor over the last several months has really changed his tune. At first, he was somewhat conciliatory, apologized for making anyone feel badly or abused or harassed. But in recent weeks, he has really started to call into question the allegations themselves that the women have made, the integrity of the investigation that's been undertaken over the last 4 months. And so I think having the Attorney General's office and her investigators spell it out over 168 pages to say definitively that Cuomo sexually harassed 11 women that they were able to substantiate the claims for is a feeling of vindication. We heard from the attorney for 2 of the women who said that it's clear now that Governor Cuomo cannot remain in office, repeating calls that have echoed for months now for Governor Cuomo's resignation. It doesn't appear like he is set to resign anytime soon. We're not sure, though, what the women are prepared to do. At least one has gone forward to police in Albany to make a formal complaint about what she said she endured. But whether other women move to make formal complaints or move to file civil lawsuits against the governor, they just haven't tipped their hand as yet. So,
looking at, you mentioned 168 pages within this report. We're also talking about 74,000 pieces of evidence. Aaron, can you give us an idea of what we're talking about here?
We're talking about everything from a litany of inappropriate or suggestive comments to laying out some of the specific nature of the investigation. In one case, the governor was found, according to the report, to have reached under a woman's blouse and grabbed her breast. One of many examples in the report of unwanted, unwelcome, and non-consensual touching that he has been accused of on a repeated basis. And I think that's the other part of this report, Kira. The Attorney General's report found a pattern of this kind of egregious behavior over a number of months and years with women that he had sometimes just a passing encounter with, maybe that he met once, or women that he had encountered several times by nature of their work in state government. And this was something that was seemingly part of the office culture, to hear how investigators described it. They said it was hostile and abusive and bullying, and that women found it demeaning and degrading and offensive and just wanted to do their work. And yet we're encountering what the report described as a toxic and hostile work environment promulgated not only by the governor, but by some of his senior staff members.
So, Aaron, also put this in perspective for us. How do employees now go back to work? Now that we have heard all of this, now that this report has been made public, now that we know all these details, many of which are quite disturbing and disgusting, do women have to go into the office today, tomorrow, the rest of the week, and come face to face with the governor in any way, shape, or form now? I mean, how does work proceed from this point forward until we know if indeed prosecutors and police departments are going to pursue charges?
Kira, I think over the last several months, we've seen something of an exodus of top aides and other staff members to the governor who decided they did not want to work there anymore, whether they publicly said it was because of these allegations or because of the environment that's now been laid bare in the report. You know, we're not sure. But a number of people did leave the governor's office. There are still some loyalists who have stuck with him, and some of the people who have come up as perhaps helping to fuel this kind of environment. His top aide, Melissa DeRosa, the secretary to the governor, the top unelected official in the state, his chief spokesman, Rich Azzopardi, who at every turn has called into question of late the integrity of the investigation and defended the conduct of the governor. He does have his loyalists, but he has also lost a lot of people. And the thing about Andrew Cuomo, I think, is that he remains dug in. He is not one to shrink from a fight. And even after initial conciliation, when these allegations were first raised, he dug in and he worked his connections. There is no one who understands the levers of state government better than Andrew Cuomo. He knows which ones to pull when, and he has done all he can to resist mounting calls for his resignation. And we don't anticipate that he'll do anything different now that this report is made public.
Okay, Aaron, I understand now we have a number of leaders within the community calling in to respond to what we have just learned about Governor Andrew Cuomo and the investigation on behalf of the New York Attorney General's office. New York State Senator Todd Kaminsky on the phone with us now. Senator, appreciate you calling in. Let's just start with your first reaction to what we have learned within this 168-page report.
You know, I just issued a statement that the governor should resign immediately, and if not, he should be forced to step down. And these findings are devastating. The conduct is frankly nauseating and dehumanizing of the employees who put their trust in the governor and the state of New York, that they would be able to go and work toward the betterment of us all and go do public policy instead of going in the private sector. And instead, they had a much more horrifying experience, and we cannot allow that in our state government, let alone in any sector of our society. And there's just no other conclusion to draw from these findings other than that the governor must resign or be forced to resign.
Now, Senator, clearly you can step forward and say he must resign and that he should not be allowed to lead one day more. But in reality, what can you do as a state senator right now? Even Letitia James, the Attorney General, laid it out and said, look, it's up to the public now. What we've done is done. It's got to be prosecutors, police departments, and the public that take it from here. So what are you going to do now, and how exactly are you going to proceed in trying to push for a resignation or the governor to step down?
Sure. You know, the way that the system works in New York is that the legislature is two houses, the Assembly and the Senate. I'm in the Senate, and the Assembly can bring impeachment charges, and the Senate would then listen to those charges and vote about whether to remove the governor. So the Assembly, I understand, is meeting as a group later today, this afternoon, and they will make a pivotal decision about whether to move forward. I certainly, hope they make the right decision. The evidence in this case really leads to only one conclusion, and I stand ready as a senator to do my part when it gets there. But at the end of the day, in a democracy, if power resides with the people, and I have to imagine that New Yorkers, and certainly everyone I've spoken to in my district over the last hour, is just finds these facts to be revolting, unacceptable, and unworthy of our state government.
What can you tell us about the Assembly meeting today? Were they already going to meet today? Is this an emergency session? What can you tell me about what is going to happen today now that this report is out?
You know, when it's an emergency session, no one knew this report was coming. I just need to say as an aside that the Attorney General's team did a really professional and thorough job. I was a federal prosecutor in the Eastern District, know Chun Kim's reputation very well, and I thought she handled herself very well, and that includes not leaking. And so no one knew this was coming today. I certainly didn't. And so the Assembly, being confronted with these overwhelmingly damning facts, has decided to meet this afternoon, and they have to make one decision. That's it. Do they move forward with impeachment? And these facts, like I said, lead down only one path at this point, and I hope they make that decision.
So as a former federal prosecutor, let me ask you, what stood out to you? What specifically did you hear within the evidence, within this report, to where you felt this is it? This is the smoking gun?
I mean, the state trooper allegations are just damning. In my life, I was certainly raised that you don't put a hand on anyone, and you certainly respect law enforcement. To put your hand on a state trooper, especially in a demeaning, demoralizing, and sexually gratifying way, is just way beyond the pale. And, of course, their credibility is unsurpassed. So, look, all of these reports are devastating. All of these survivors need to be recognized. But maybe because it was new and because of the position, it clearly shows the governor knows no bounds, didn't think he was, touchable at all. And I feel bad for every one of these victims, but so proud of their courage. But all of these facts today really combined to form, a nauseating picture of this just damning conduct.
New York State Senator Todd Kaminsky, thank you, sir, for calling in. Appreciate it, Senator.
Thank you.
Aaron Katursky, also Brian Buckmeyer, let me just get your final thoughts here as we wrap this up. As you heard, Aaron, the state senator, confirming that indeed the Assembly went into an emergency session today. Not surprising. What should we be paying attention to?
We just got a statement from the Speaker of the State Assembly, Carl Heastie. He does mention the emergency session. The Assembly did not know this was coming today any more than anybody else did, Kira. So they were caught a bit off guard, but they have been looking into these allegations for the last several months. Heastie, we should say, is a Cuomo ally. He did not immediately call for any impeachment proceedings or any resignation, but he did say in his statement that the conduct outlined in the Attorney General's report is not the kind of conduct fit for someone who's the governor of the state. So it may be that whatever remaining support Cuomo has is rapidly deteriorating. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear from Assembly Speaker Heastie or others in state government later on today or in the coming days about potential impeachment proceedings to get underway. And that blows everything more into the open than than it already is. I think you have 11 women whose claims have been substantiated in this report, including, as State Senator Kaminsky noted, the state trooper. But the other women are now issuing on Twitter or through statements through their attorneys calls for Cuomo to resign. We know that they've been backed by certain legal defense funds, and they may use that to their advantage. So this does not end with this report, even if there is no immediate criminal referral from the Attorney General's office.
Aaron Katersky, thank you so much. We'll continue to, of course, follow this and talk with you about what comes next now that this investigation is out. Brian Buckmeyer, final thoughts with you. I'm curious, in a time like this, when Aaron says that the governor does still have loyalists and does still have people supporting him, I tend to wonder how long that will last, and will that help the governor at all? And also, in a time like this, what is it that loyalists can say to back up the governor when you hear so many explicit details from 179 individuals?
I would expect that we hear the same excuses we always hear. You're going to hear some of the people that work closer with the governor say, well, he's never sexually assaulted me before. I've always seen him and he's never done this fallacy that because on a one-on-one, this individual doesn't do X, Y, or Z to you, they're not capable of doing that to another woman or another person. And so I would anticipate the similar excuses we hear from politicians in this environment or this arena when allegations such as this happen. But I would hope and I think I would expect that a lot of his loyalists, when faced with these hard facts about groping, about touching state troopers, about under the shirt, about grabbing their breasts, when these allegations start to roll out and sink in and they're asked the hard questions as to where they stand, I'm hoping that there will be fewer with the governor when these allegations, or if these allegations are proven to be true, as the Attorney General James has said, or we're going to see a lot more people standing on the other side against him, saying this is wrong, he needs to resign, and if not, then impeachment should occur.
Felony trial attorney and ABC News contributor Brian Buckmeyer, thank you so much. Also, ABC News senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky, thank you both. We will continue to follow this story clearly throughout the day.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.